Welcome to the World United. Welcome to the World United.
And it wonderfully leads into Nicola's presentation. So I'll introduce Nicola and then we'll have some time for the panel after that. So much appreciation to you, and beautiful artwork behind as well. Wonderful colours.
Thank you.
And
Bernadine Johnson, Bush Medicine Leaves.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, Nicola, who's here in front of us, lovely to see you, is a book lover, a tree sister, a poet, a story catcher, a photographer, and a mindfulness practitioner who adores nature, street art, and her collection of op-shop denim jackets. It's great. She also happens to be a global presenter, speaker, facilitator, and coach who bridges Western science with Eastern philosophy and ancient wisdom practices. Nicola is the creator of Heartwise, leadership, which is powerful listening, powerful speaking, and Friday's mindful moments. So that's an easy one to Google too. Remember that one, Friday's mindful moments. Nicola works with organizational leaders and spiritually oriented individuals to authentically and powerfully transform themselves from the inside out. Nicola's been featured in Inspiring Workplaces, that's in the UK, TNT, Explode, The Status Quo, The Happiness Project in India, and on Sidewalk Talk in the US. Nicola has a degree in pharmacy as a higher education and master's in applied positive psychology, and a growing collection of certifications, including neuro-linguistic programming, resilience, coaching, Here with Heart, and the art of feminine presence. We welcome Nicola.
Thank you, Geraldine. I did ask you not to read the whole screed, but thank you so much. Thank you for all my fellow presenters, for being here, for supporting us all on this journey. Today, this is my story from head to heart. It's about finding my center, but first about falling apart. The world had me in a box with edges and so square. My body craved curves. It was screaming, "This isn't fair." I struggled to hear the call of my heart. It was a call of creativity, of poetry and art. But my head was so strong, it kept telling me, "That's wrong. You can't listen to your head," and that whispered ancient song. The tumour, it was a shock, attached to my lung and my heart. Thank God for Ben, my surgeon, who gently prized us apart. It was then I vowed to listen for the rest of my time on earth, heeding those whispered callings and honouring my true worth. A 17-centimetre scar is what finally brought me home, put my head in its rightful place, and allowed my heart to roam, to be the human that I really am, imperfect, quirky, hugging trees, to express the truth inside, my truth, my heart, me. This is where I live. This is my truth, my essence, my belonging. And this is where all of us live. We don't live up here in our heads. As humans, we live here. This is the expression of ourselves. This is where our gifts lie. And this is where we connect with each other. This is where we connect with Mother Earth, with the sky, with the planet, with something that is divine and beyond. It is through the gateway of the heart. But like a lot of people, that's not how I used to live. I grew up in an academic family. I went to an academic school. And when I was growing up, one of the greatest compliments anybody could give me was, "Gosh, you're clever," about intellectual and, cognitive understanding. And I took that on board. That's not to say that our intellect needs to be dismissed completely, but to live completely from a head in that place is dismissing what I think is the much more valuable, important part of us as a human being, you know, traveling the earth at this time. So I went to pharmacy school. I became a pharmacist. I worked in South Australia, around Australia. I've worked in London. I've worked in hospital. I've managed pharmacies. I moved into the pharmaceutical industry and I worked for 2 multinationals. I worked for Schering-Plough and AstraZeneca in Sydney, you know, climbing the corporate ladder. I shifted slightly and moved to Queensland, where I landed at Griffith University and became an academic. And I was an academic in higher education for nearly 10 years. I didn't have an honours degree. I didn't have a PhD. I didn't have a research portfolio. I'd actually come in as a professional through the side door. So I wasn't considered a real academic in that environment. So I was really trying to fit in, to be accepted. You know, we all crave to feel part of something and to belong. So I was trying to fit into those guardrails and squish myself in the box and the red tape and the requirements of a higher education, unwieldy institution. I wasn't listening to my heart, what my calling was. I suffered extreme depression, anxiety, high levels of stress, and I was just ignoring it, doing what so many of us do and just keep fighting on because we believe this is the way and this is the path, until my body screamed so loudly, I had no choice but to listen. And that was in January 2011. So I'm at Griffith University. I am frantically preparing for 2 summer semester courses, and I had a dry cough. I felt fine, but I had this real hacking cough. And it annoyed me, and it annoyed me that I had to do something about it because I couldn't lecture and teach for days and weeks and months on end if I was going to cough all the time. I thought that's not going to cut it. So I carved out like a half hour to go and see the campus doctor. And I basically brought a prescription with me to say, doctor, and her name was Wendy Smith, I'll always remember, she'd never seen me before this. I said, look, this is the deal. I've been overseas. I've picked up a bug. Prescribe me a broad spectrum antibiotic, please. One of these 2. And just let me get on with it. And thankfully, she didn't. She sent me off for an X-ray, and to shorten the story, 2 weeks later, I'm on an operating table having a 12 centimetre by 9 centimetre tumour, cut out of my chest. It's attached to my lung. I've had part of my lung removed, and it was attached to my heart. I've actually got a patch on my heart on the pericardium. They took a section off just to make sure the tumour hadn't actually infiltrated. I'm fine. I've had 5-year, 10-year clearances, so I'm actually more than fine now. But you can imagine back then, that was a huge shock to my system physically, but a huge shock mentally, emotionally, spiritually to me at that time. And it really put me back to think about, what have I achieved? And is this the life that I want? If I hadn't come off the operating table, would I have been happy with my life and where it had gone and what I'd done? And what it came down to wasn't so much the what of success and achievements and awards and things which I'd won. It was more the question of who had I been? How had I been? How had I showed up in this world? And had I been me? Where was I really expressing who I was? And realizing that in a lot of cases, not really. I was too worried about what people would think. I was too worried about following the path and success in a traditional sense. So I decided that wasn't going to be the way I wanted to live the rest of my life on this earth. I wanted to live a far more vibrant, authentic life. I wanted to be me. And then I was stumped because it was, well, who am I? So like many, many people, and it sounds, like Eleonora as well, the journey, that journey of exploration, of exploring yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, all sorts of spiritual practices, Buddhism, mindfulness became and is a huge part of my way of living and being. And I also discovered the Heart Math Institute and all their research around the power of the heart. And it really resonated with me because I really believed that this cancer and this tumor was a message to go, you have not been following your heart. So we're going to target that area until you listen. And so the heart was something that I was really exploring. And to suddenly realize there is so much more. We have a physical heart for sure, but we also have a neurological, electrical, energetic, emotional, spiritual heart. And I went on the exploration of those to realize we do have a cardiac brain. It was discovered in 1991. So just like we have a cranial brain in our heads, we have a cardiac brain in our hearts, and we have an enteric brain in our gut. And there's other brains that are likely to be discovered as well. But our heart can feel and emote and has long and short-term memory quite independently of the brain. So when we talk about listening to your heart and the intelligence of the heart, in one sense, we're talking about tapping into a totally different way of thinking and being. The ancients have known that for always, but Western science has now come along to close that gap, to prove it in a Western sense, not that it needed proving. But I was fascinated by the fact that we actually have this neurological cardiac brain as well, but we also have this energetic heart. The heart has an electrical signal. We know that. It's measured with ECGs, and a moving electricity creates magnetism, an electromagnetic field. The heart generates this incredibly powerful electromagnetic field around us, and it carries emotions. So what we are experiencing in our heart changes the quality of that. If we are in a state of frustration, of anger, those really heavy negative emotions, it changes our physiology. It changes our heart rate, or more specifically, our heart rate variability, HRV. It becomes quite jagged, and we end up with this incoherent, jagged electromagnetic field. And people feel that, that vibe. When you pull away from people, it doesn't feel good. And on the flip side, when we can breathe into our hearts and generate that warmth, that love, loving kindness, gratitude, acceptance, hope, optimism, we actually change our biochemistry, we change our physiology, we create a very smooth, coherent heart rate variability, and that is broadcast out into our electromagnetic field for people to feel. And the Heart Math Institute has also measured that, and they've done studies to show that when we change our coherence, our heart coherence, we change that electromagnetic field, we influence people and their fields, whether they are aware of it or not. The most powerful generator will influence those around us. It also influences brainwaves. We'll influence our own brainwaves and influence the brainwaves of others. So we have this incredible capacity. I call it creating a heart field, of breathing into that space, opening up, generating those positive emotions to change the nature of our electromagnetic field. And then we are all interconnected. So that field will connect with others, and we have the ability to change how other people feel, that energetic heart. Megan Watterson, who's a Harvard-trained feminist theologian, and I love her work, talks about existing intensely. She has a practice of coming back into the heart and existing with pure aliveness, awareness. She calls it existing intensely, and I love that. that way of being, of pure presence. And I think if part of the healing of humanity is for each individual to come into alignment, that pure presence, to generate that loving electromagnetic field. And I believe that if enough people do that, we can create a global heart field so that we start to raise the consciousness and the vibration of everybody to start to operate from a different way of being, to heal. And I really believe we have a spiritual connection, and the heart is the gateway to that. I know a big part of my journey has been listening to the whispers, those little intuitive nudges. And by doing that, we listen to our own intuition, but we also tap into that wider field of universal consciousness and intelligence. We have access to something beyond time and space that also informs, and its wisdom can guide us. And that is the way that's been my journey of moving from being really headstrong and very cognitive, and that's all there was, to opening up to this whole world of heart-based wisdom, and the heart as a gateway to something beyond myself. And it's how I operate in life. It's how I operate my business. And I am a speaker and a trainer, working in the corporate world a lot of the time. And I bring that concept of pure presence now into my work for powerful speaking, powerful listening, powerful presence to underpin leadership and a way forward. And it's how I make my decisions. It's really tuning in. And I get a sense of aliveness. I get a sense of excitement. I get an uplift to go, yes, this is the path. Or I get a feeling that's really heavy and dense and going, no, that's not the way. And to give you a real practical example, with the start of COVID in March, April 2020, here in Australia, being in the speaking world, everybody said, pivot online, quick, grab your programs, all my face-to-face programs. You've got to turn them into online programs. You've got to outreach to all your clients. You've got to offer them all this help in this environment. And it felt disingenuous to me. It felt icky. It's like, I'm not, it didn't resonate with me at all. I ceased all marketing. I came back purely into my body. It was a real space of introspection. And I had a desire to reach out to a couple of friends that's how the Fridays Mindful Moments started, of sending little messages and I photographed nature, beautiful photographs to just stop, breathe, come back into your body, come home. It's okay. I posted one on LinkedIn. I now have a global tribe. I post messages for remembering to come back home into ourselves, be mindfully present once a week, every week. And I've been doing it now since April 2020. And it came from just a little intuitive nudge. My heart went, yes. And from there, I have met so many wonderful people, have so many opportunities. Next year, we'll be planning to write a book. People want me to start a podcast. From following that, and from a really strategic point of view, it didn't make sense, but it just lit me up. The heart is the gateway. It is the way of healing. And I wanted to finish with Rumi, 16th century Sufi mystic. The very center of your heart is where life begins, the most beautiful place on earth. And if we can all come back home to our hearts and generate that beautiful heart field, I believe we can globally create a heart field for change. Thank you.
Magnificent. Yes, and we can globally create a heart field for change. Yes, and I love how you started with poetry and of your own, a story in poetry, and brought us back through with Rumi as well, which links us then to how Reverend Chris Parnell started us with the multiple viewpoints. And I was thinking about, as you were saying that, and the hearts coming together, those images of the people from representing many different cultural and religious lines being in one space for the earth, in a positive, loving way. So